Hello. Hi. We are live. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to the stream. Let's see. So yeah, it's the New Year. It's 2021. Crazy. We made it. So we've got a long list of things to go through. One, I did pick a winner for the giveaway. However, I will not be announcing it on the stream because I need to reach out to them to make sure that they can actually take delivery of the winnings. What else? If you enjoy hanging out with me today, please, and want to see more of my work, please head on over to Instagram. It's at justwondering.brad. On Instagram, you can see a lot more of my work. And if you want to support the stream, you can check out Studio 1213 on Etsy. So like I said, did the giveaway, and I do need to reach out to the person who won, just for a little bit of transparency on how I did it. I basically took all of the entries in order that they were received on Instagram and YouTube, made a list, and because there are only 6 entries, I rolled a fair D12 because I'm nerdy enough to have one of these. D12 divided by 2, rounded up because, again, nerd. And yeah, so I picked a winner. I'll be in touch with the winner, make sure that they can actually take delivery of it, and then yeah, we'll get that to them. Super excited for 2021. 2020 was a year. Definitely a year. Some good things, some bad things, some crazy things. But at least now, obviously, I'm going to just talk about what happened relevant to the stream and the channel. This year we were able to upgrade a lot of our technology. New microphone, new webcam. I have a new computer coming, although that was not part of the stream. And yeah, I do thank everyone for sticking with me through the year. Yeah, like I said, it's been a year. This year in particular, I was pretty low on extra time. One of the reasons why that I was only doing live streams is because I don't need to do any post for a live stream. I just stream, it goes up on YouTube, and that's it. There's no editing. I might edit the description. But that's why there's only live streams. And that was because, as a lot of you know, I was also finishing my graduate work. I was earning my master's in public health, which I started my master's in public health back in 2018. Obviously not predicting that we would have the public health emergency that we would have in 2020. I'm just going to start my thread here. So started my master's in public health in 2018. Obviously, the pandemic hits in 2020, and it was really important to me. And I guess since I am starting to tie, let me just move my camera down and refocus. Yeah, I got this lovely webcam that does, hang on, center. Yeah, so lovely webcam that has manual focus, which I really love. Unfortunately, the lighting isn't so great today. We are having storms, or rain squalls, I guess. Not really storms. Rain squalls today, and so it's rather dark outside. So I've turned on a couple of the lamps. Let me see if this helps a little bit too. There we go, a little bit more even lighting. But anyway, so 2020, it was really important to me to come out of my master's of public health already employed. One, because student debt. And two, with the pandemic going on, I wanted to do something. And so, as some of you may know, I got a job with my local health department. Um, and so that was great. But also very time consuming, and it reduced my time, the time that I had to tie flies and stream by a lot. Now that my degree is over, though, I have a little bit more time, and I fully plan on using it. Now, I'm not going to stream more. I'm still going to only stream once a week, but I am going to start doing, at least I'm going to plan to start doing, more kind of standalone videos, maybe some how-tos, maybe some like time-lapse stuff. We'll see. Again, I'm still waiting on the new computer that I ordered. It's one of those things where it's like they say that they're going to ship by December 30th or whatever, but then of course they don't have anybody working between Christmas and New Year's, so nothing actually gets done, and the computer doesn't ship. So, oh, and by the way, today we are actually going to be tying a fly that I have never tied. And this is another one of those things where I'll talk to you about why I've never tied it. But I've never tied a Jock Scott in my life. And we're going to tie a Jock Scott. Because why not? New year, new things, let's do it. So yeah. So with more time on my hands, hopefully I'll be able to do more stuff for the channel and for the stream and for the Instagram. Although I will say with Instagram's new TOS or terms of service, I'm having a real debate with myself whether I want to stay really active on Instagram. I'm not sure. So, anyway, today's going to be pretty chill. As you can see, I haven't done any material prep, which, I mean, to be fair, this is a Jock Scott. And again, we're going to do this in two parts. Body this week, wing next week, or whenever I stream next, as usual. But today's just going to be pretty chill. And so yeah, so I have some things planned for the stream, and hopefully now that I have the time, I'll be able to actually do them and get them done and get more good content out for you. But like, I've always said this, fly tying is a hobby for me, and I love that it is a self-sustaining hobby. Through the Etsy shop, I'm able to make enough money that I can continue to do this without thinking about the economics of it too much. I'm not trying to make a living off of this, which is nice. Because if I were, that'd be real rough. But I'm not. So, I'm able to do this as a hobby. And, but of course, on the flip side, that means I don't always feel, there are other priorities. And while I feel that I would like to and certainly want to put out as much content as possible for, the channel and the Instagram, oftentimes there are other priorities that come up first. And I think 2021 is a year in which I really want to spend a little bit more time and will be a little bit more purposeful without really kind of digging into the content that I want to create for the channel. Because, at the end of the day, the way I kind of envisioned the channel being is more educational. I realize the live streams are not terribly educational, especially since I do tend to do the same thing week after week. But it's like this is an art form that is kind of antiquated, and it's got some real it's got real proponents out there in the world, but it's a niche. It's a niche of a niche of a niche. Essentially, if you think of like fly fishing as a niche part of fishing, and then not only that, but then fly tying is a niche part of fly fishing. Because not all fly fishermen tie their own flies, although I'm pretty sure most of them try at one point or another. Not everybody ties their own flies. And then amongst fly tyers, not a whole lot of us tie these classic flies. And it's not just classic Atlantic salmon flies, it's all classics. Mary Elvis Marbury, Carrie Stevens streamers, even like something as simple as like the Cahills, like the Cahill dry flies. Not many people know much about them, like, or tie them now. So, I really want people to appreciate the classics and to continue to fish them and to continue to tie them. So I want this channel to be a little bit more educational than it is now. So there'll be some more educational content. I think the tail is next. Tail veiled with So anyway, long story short, there'll be more content, I promise. It probably won't come all at once, but we'll work on it. Gosh. This tail? This is a tail. Is this a nice tail? This is an alright tail. I actually think that fits pretty well. All right. Now, in terms of continuing, channel upgrades, I think the next thing I need to upgrade is my lighting. Like I said, I'm using a couple of different lamps. It looks okay on the screen, but if we're doing more formal video, I think I'm going to need a little bit more lighting, which can be controlled and is a little bit more consistent. But that is all stuff we will be working on as we go. So, all right, and we need tail veiling. Now this is Indian Crowtail veiling, but of course, as usual, I'm going to be using Red Weaver since that's what we have. Oh yeah, Eastern Fly. This is Price Tannet. And do I use GSP? I do use. So what I'm using right now. Oh man, This doesn't even have a label on it. I actually think this is Orvis brand, like 70 whatever 76 denier. But I do use GSP for the underbody, and I will say I don't. It's not my favorite. I prefer Unistretch. Prefer Unistretch because it has a little bit more texture and things tied over Unistretch tend not to slide around quite as much, in my opinion. But GSP is what I've got. And this is Vivus. The underbody I'm using is Vivus. So, but yes, that is what it is, but it is not my favorite. Right, so, just going to take... Yeah, I thought about doing Kelson's, but I don't know. I guess I like Price Tanet's version just a little bit better. Just looking at the material list. Again, like I said, I've never tied a Jock Scott, which you'd think I would have, but this kind of gets into why I tend to choose the flies I choose. I feel like things like Jock Scott and Green Highlander being well known are a little bit, I don't know, overtied. They're a little trite. You know, let's be real. They're beautiful patterns and they're attractive patterns, which I think is why they're so popular. But I'm not into just doing like popular for popular. And the other thing is like there's some weird and wonderful patterns out there which I love. So I tend to choose things that tend to be. I'm gonna of course eat my own thing because there are very popular patterns like the Doctor series that I love, and I tie quite frequently. So dental floss for underbodies. I haven't tried it. The primary, I would assume that it would. Okay, so the the main consideration when choosing thread for tying classic salmon flies, and now as I understand it, for most of fly tying, period, from what I've talked to people who tie, all sorts of patterns, is that it needs to be able to be flattened. Um, and so I assume dental floss, I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to use the mint. But if the dental floss can be flattened, then there's no reason why you couldn't. A little bit of twist in the tail milling there. I know like some dental floss can't be flattened. But I don't see any reason why you couldn't. Also, though, you have to think like for the size fly that you're tying. For example, the underbody that I have on here right now is 4 layers of GSP, flattened GSP, and that's like 140 denier. Uh, I don't know if I'd want to go any heavier than that, just because of one, again, the ability to flatten it, and two, just general thread control. If I had to estimate, I'd say a lot of dental floss, and here we are, talk about nerdy, trying to estimate the denier of dental floss. It's probably around like 300. So in terms of being able to control that, now if you're tying it down to nymph size, if you're able to do that, then man, I would assume you could. Now, as usual, nice big butt. Please excuse my super noisy apartment. But yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, uh, I I don't know if you can hear this in the streams, but we have an extremely noisy apartment complex. So I do apologize in advance. I will apologize once a year for that. Since it's the new year, do that today. Wait, I'll need this later. Um, yeah, so we have a herd of elephants that lives above our heads, so you may hear that. All right, so what kind of hackle players are these? These are just articulated ones. I don't even know the brand, um, and they are absolutely ratty. For example, the little rubber piece here is absolutely falling apart. But I love the articulated hackle players for wrapping hurl. I don't use these for hackle that much, because this is a 5/0 hook. So for a 5/0 hook, I don't actually need the hackles are big enough. I don't need hackle players. Um, but for wrapping hurls, these are great. But brand, I don't even know. I think these came in like one of those like starter kits or whatever. Um, Lifesaver for hurls. Okay, just gotta make sure I got enough tinsel going on here. All right. Well, I really need one of those like material keepers. Um, Let me see. Oh, do I break? No. I mean, I suppose yes, technically. But so yeah, so I don't often break the hurl, unless I'm tying in some really thin hurl. I've got some pretty thin um, dyed hurl that I just tend to break. But actually, the black hurl that I use for the butt on this, that I use most often, is actually fantastically robust. Um, don't break it a whole lot at all. All right, so that's about halfway. Um, and I think it's down mostly to the hurl itself. And I will say these Hackle Players probably are a little bit sharper on the edge, but I don't tend to wrap my hurl particularly, hard. Um, so there's not too much pressure on the hurl when I wrap it. But anything, actually, I will say the little rubber piece, which, like I said, needs to be replaced on these pliers. But this little rubber piece, any Hackle Players with that work great for hurl. But outside of that, most Hackle Players are going to run into problems occasionally wrapping hurl. Put that down. So this floss is maybe a little bit pale um, for the Jock Scott, but it's the only yellow I have right now. I don't know what happened to my darker yellow. So you'll see me sawing this back and forth as I wind on, and basically what that does is it just helps the fibers settle into all the little, you know, um, nooks and crannies from the previous layer, um, and that just helps flatten the floss as it gets rolled on, as the old timers would say, or as they would write. And the nice thing about floss or any kind of wrapped body covering is that you can unwrap every single thread wrap tying down the original butt end, and then you just can rewrap, so that you save some thread wraps there. I'm actually going to run this butt end all the way to the front, so you need to make up some bulk underneath the hook here. I'm going to wrap. I'm only going to do 3 wraps of tinsel. And as I wrap, as I'm tying down the tinsel, I'm actually wrapping the thread back this way. And the reason for that is because now, on top of this goes veilings, and I want the veilings, I want to, thinking about direction, I always tie, so one way that I save thread wraps, I need to explain this better. One way I save thread wraps is to wrap, if I'm going to tie something off, I wrap, if I tie multiple things off, I tie one thing off going in one direction, undo a couple, then go back in this direction. But if I have to tie on, say, a veiling or a butt, I'll tie off the first thing going in this direction, I'll tie on the second thing going in that direction, and the third thing in that direction. A little bit complicated, but it just means that when I build up thread underneath, say, a butt, I'm building up even layers so that the butt isn't, tapered in one direction or the other. And also, if you're going to put things under a butt, you can hide a lot of bulk. That's what butts are basically for. All right. Veiling. I'm a pro streamer. I am so prepared. Anyway. Where is it? I have too many things and too many drawers. Favorite. So the veilings, of course, are toucan on the Jock Scott. My favorite substitute, barely see it, is actually dyed swan. In the United States, there are an invasive species of swan, and I can never remember if it's the trumpeter swan that's the invasive one or the mute swan that's the invasive one. But I believe it's the one with the orange beak. They're considered an invasive species, and so you can actually hunt them on a regular waterfowl license. And the swan breast feathers dyed yellow are my favorite toucan substitute. I mean, on close inspection, just like any other substitute, it's obviously not toucan, but for the arm's length or framed fly on the wall test, it looks pretty good. So as usual, I just use a little bit of saliva just to mat down the feathers so that the fluffiness isn't getting in the way. Gonna gently try to align the tips as best as possible. Now, the recipe calls for 6. And I'm not entirely certain if it means 6 on top, 6 on the bottom, but I'm actually going to do 6 total and do 3 on top, 3 on the bottom. Otherwise, you are never going to see the yellow body joint. So, and again, I don't trim them. I rely on the extra fluff, so to speak, to help. So when I tie it on, as you can see, it's very flat. kind of slick down like that. And by tying that in as a unit very flat, that just helps the veiling stay flat as well as I tie it in. You know what? Let me just trim this first. So I'm going to tie it in a little bit long over the butt. I'm going to soft loop it in. And just kind of wiggle it around until it's snug underneath. I think that looks okay. Actually, I want it a little bit longer, I think. Just tap it here. That's good. So, one wrap there. Good. More. And work it down into one flat package that can be tied in. Again, tying them in flat is important. So that they sit properly over the body. This top is a little bit longer. Yeah. Actually, still look a little bit long on top. There we go. Like that. But yeah, slicking down the feathers like that really helps to make the feathers more manageable. And then once the the saliva dries out of them, they'll fluff back up. It'll look like it'll look like toucan, hopefully. But yeah, like I said, yellow dyed swan breast feathers, great substitute. Like I said, there is a species of swan in North America that is considered invasive. You can hunt them, and they don't count towards your waterfowl bag limit in most states. So, doing something good for both the ecosystem, the native swan species, and a great source of toucan. And I bet if you dyed those swan breast feathers, orange or red, you can make a credible cock of the rock sub for those patterns that recall for it. I think like the orange parson. All right, so I'm gonna take my thread, wax it. Give it a couple good turns just to bind things down. I'm going to trim all this mess. Top and bottom. I was going to leave the tag end of floss, but yeah. All right, so let's unwind a little bit, grab my oyster turtle. Now all I'm doing to prepare the ostrich hurl is I'm just pulling off a couple of the, like, I don't know, like an eighth of an inch or even just a 16th of an inch of the um, fibers from the butt end of the hurl, and that just gives me a place to tie in. And then of course you want to tie in so hurl, whether it's peacock or ostrich, has a T cross section with the barbs or the fibers on the top, and you want to tie it in so it's that way. Um, so that way, when you go to wrap it, right, it folds. Come on, fold. It folds so that the stem is going forward, and the fibers are to the rear. It's also the reason why that was not cleverly tied in, by the way. So the other thing that I do with my hurl is that I will sweep the fibers of the hurl to the rear. I'm not folding I'm not, technically I'm not folding the hurl, but and practically speaking, it's sort of. But I just want to pull the fibers so they don't get stuck going forwards, because there's nothing more messy than a butt with fibers going in the wrong direction. So next, I'm going to prepare my hackle. This is just a black dyed Indian uh, hackle cape. I don't need a feather with a huge amount of taper, obviously, because it's the second joint of the body. If I were starting the hackle from where the first joint is, I'd want a fairly tapered hackle to go forward. Um, However, because this is in fact the second joint in the body, um, it doesn't need to be greatly tapered. Uh, I just want to be able to pick one that has appropriate length barbs and it's fairly spiky. Um, so in terms of the number of turns of hurl that I use, I go by visual. So like, I didn't do a terribly great job on this slide, but I try to make the fore butt and the rear butt about the same width. Um, and the reason why I don't count is because the hurl can vary in the thickness, of the fiber of the stem itself. So it's all just kind of a little bit of by feel. That's generally how I tie anyway. But I go by what looks to be similar thickness. You can actually measure it if you want, but you know, um, I go by looks like, because once you get everything on the fly, the hurl, the hackle, all the body turns, the throat, it's going to be a person who's like looking for those kinds of details that is actually going to be like, ooh, your hackle or your butt's not the same size. Um, so all I'm doing here is just giving the hackle a little bit of a pre-fold. One, just to see how long the barbs are. Two, getting them to stick out at the right angle, because I don't want to trap any fibers under the thread when I tie on. So I'm just doing the pinch between two fingers and then using one hand to gently push the fibers to one side. And that just gives me an idea. So this hackle, I don't know if you can see that too well. Not terribly tapered, but nice and shiny and very spiky. So this is a good one. And also I'm using the principle of first on, last down. So the first thing that I tie on for the rib here, or what will be the rib, including the hackle, goes on. And you always tie on things in clockwise direction. So this is going on at approximately 6:37 on the clock face. And then the first, the rib that goes on next, or which will go down next, or I guess second, because this has a two-part rib, so flat tinsel and oval tinsel. That'll go on at approximately 8 o'clock. And because this gets floss over, I'm not too concerned about tying everything right up against the butt. You can use the floss to kind of push everything around a little bit if you need to. So the last thing that I'm going to tie on, furthest to the back, so around 8:30, 9 o'clock on the clock face, which is straight on the side towards you, the camera. So that's going to go on last because it's going to be the first thing that I wrap when I can't see. Actually, I'm going to wax my thread as usual. If you have trouble with things, with like ribs or hackles pulling out after you've tied them on, and you got to wrap them and they pull out, wax your thread. It is the number one thing you can do to secure things on a fly. I use Kelson's Formula black cobbler's wax. This is made by Bill Bailey, who is an amazing, I guess, artisan producer of head cements and waxes. So I use Bill Bailey's. Cobbler's wax, and I also use Bill Bailey's Kelson's head cement. Kelson's Formula head cement. So I'm going to wax just a short section here. Yeah, and even though there is a floss segment that's going to go over it, because this is going to be under the first layer of floss, it's not going to be visible. And it won't affect the wrapping of the floss. Some people think it does or say it does, but it doesn't. And I'm just going to wrap everything under flattened wraps of thread right to the front. So yeah, so if for those of you who may not be familiar, I'm sure everybody watching right now is probably familiar. But if you're watching this at a later date, and you see me spin my bobbin, what I'm doing is I'm taking the twist out of the thread, which is called flattening the thread, and it just allows the thread to be wrapped, smoothly over the body. Because if it has a twist, the thread will go on round, and that's not good. You want it to go on flat because that saves on bulk, makes a smoother body, and it's overall just good practice. And the more and more I'm hearing about it, actually, it's good practice in general. So it's good practice in general, just when tying anything, really. So I'm going to stop right here. Yeah, Eastern fly. Freestyle flies are a great way to practice. I highly recommend them. Uh, you know, take. So what I recommend is take a known pattern. For example, the Thunder and Lightning, or the Kate, or or if you want a slightly more complicated pattern, like the Lion. Well, maybe not the Lion. The Cock Robin. Take that, then go through the material list, figure out what you have and what you don't have. And if you don't have something, replace it with something that you do have. One of the great substitutes that you can find anywhere and is useful when you're not tying classic Atlantic salmon flies is like Angora goat. I use this. I actually use this for freestyle flies all the time. But if you start with a known recipe and just make replacements, so if you don't have black floss, use red floss. If you don't have, if you don't have dyed swan, use dyed turkey. Actually, I'm going to use dyed turkey. I use dyed turkey anyway. I don't use dyed swan. If it calls for dyed swan, use dyed turkey. If it calls for dyed goose, use dyed turkey because it ties better. But if it calls for, say bustard, you'll see in almost every recipe it calls for some kind of bustard, either speckled bustard or florican. Use brown turkey. Use brown mottled turkey. It'll look similar enough, but yeah. So if you don't have something in that recipe, replace it with something else. If you don't have Highlander green dubbing, replace it with a dark blue dubbing. Dark blue Highlanders are kind of a thing. I wouldn't start with a green Highlander. I'd probably start with something like a Kate or a Thunder and Lightning. But yeah, make substitutions. Absolutely. Freestyle flies, I mean, you can make a substitution and call it, whatever you want. That's the way to practice. It really is. It saves you money on materials. You can use materials that you already have. And if you decide that classic Atlantic salmon flies aren't for you, you haven't wasted anything. Because you can still use, like that Angora goat dubbing, you can use for steelhead flies or nymphs. Right. So I already have some black floss going. No use in breaking out some more if I don't need to. I just use a business card with notches cut in it to store extra floss. Easy enough. And this is a Lagarton floss, so unlike the yellow floss, which is JEC, this is a little bit more coarse. It's actually my preference. Those who know me know that I don't like. I'm not a huge fan of glass glossy floss bodies. they're kind of uninteresting to me. My preference is definitely for something with texture. So uh, the coarser French floss, the Gartens, works great. So I'm just going to wrap this. Oh, silly me. In order to avoid a glossy, glass smooth floss body, I have even gone so far as to introduce like a quarter turn twist into my floss work. Has driven some judges mad, apparently, but I'm not entirely certain I give two rips. Alright, so now the first thing to go down is the last thing we tied on, which is this big, broad, flat silver. It's going to be 3 turns. Oop. It's actually good because my spacing wasn't terribly good there. You could. You could use yeah, it just depends on how heavy the thread is. And again, it's you want to be able to flatten it. If you can flatten it, then yes, absolutely you can use it. Um, yeah, I don't use a burnishing tool. I have a burnishing tool, but I don't use it because, like I said, I'm not going for a glassy smooth floss body. I ain't. Uh, and and so I don't. Um, but I have in the past. Um, they work great, especially the agate ones. Um, Give me a second, and I'll show you my I'll show you my burnishing tool. Phrasing. Um, but yeah, I don't because, like I said, I'm going for texture. Well, yeah, for like, uh, so let's see. So the burnishing tool that I have, this one's on it, but is this? Uh, this is actually for, I believe, paper embossing. But yeah, you can use this just fine. I don't, like I said, but I don't often. I will say the one time that I do use this is if I am doing a commission. Um, because that is a different standard of tying. uh, I, I, yeah, what you see me do in the live streams is is not um, is not my highest standard of tying. Um, some of that is for just time reasons. Uh, if I were to tie to the same standard as I do for commissions, we would be here for days. Um, so it's all the same tips and tricks. It's just maybe applied a little bit more quickly than normal. However, there's one thing which is most definitely not shortcutted, and that's when I set wings. And I really do. Um, if I'm lucky, I can set a wing once. I usually end up setting a wing 2 or 3 times, even if I can set it the first time. And then the reason for that is just because I want to play around with the different wing proportions or wing settings. Um, but wing setting is the one place on stream where I don't cut you know, a little bit of time off. All right. The last thing for today is the throat, and it's spotted guinea. Almost always, when they call for guinea in the throat, they mean spotted guinea. Um, if they mean the guinea with the large dots, then they usually will specify that. Mhm. The only problem with speckled guinea is that it's hard to find it in the larger sizes that you need for big hooks, because the speckled bit comes from like the sides of the guinea, I believe. Let's see. one of these days I will do some material prep before a stream. But like I said, the one thing I like about streams is that there's not a whole lot of, you know, back end work, which was important when I was a student. Now that I'm not a student, I no longer have that excuse. Although I guess technically, like for today at least, I'm still a student because the degree doesn't go through until the 10th. So, all right, here's a likely candidate. Oh, this one's got a pretty good twist in it. So this might be a little bit fun to. Yeah, so this is a nice. You can see the speckles. How it's not just the big dots. It's got all the little speckling in between. When they call for speckle guinea or galena, this is usually what they're referring to. If they call for spotted guinea or guinea with large spots, they probably mean something like this. Tied in by the tip. Actually, I'm gonna wax my thread. Wax my thread. Gonna trim up the tip. And like I said, this feather's got a little bit of a twist in it, so it's going to be a little bit tricky to fold it, but we'll see. I'm going to get about 3 turns out of this feather, I think. And I'm actually going to use Hackle Players because I didn't do a crap job of picking. Always sweep into the rear. So I'm only going to do 2. So wiggle my thread back and forth just to push it through the fibers. So don't trap any fibers. Couple of turns of thread. Trim it. And you always want to trim your hackle on the side so the last turn is under the hook. And because I am not one of those people who will fold the hackle all the way down to the bottom of the hook every time. It's like I don't care that the hackle sticks up above the hook. I'm not going to pull it down because I am of the belief, and perhaps I'm wrong, but I'm of the belief that having a little bit of hackle above the hook helps fill in the gap between that you inevitably get between the underwing and the body. So I'm going to build up just a little bit of thread bulk. And then I'm going to tie off. And I'm going to switch to black for the wing, as usual. And that's where we'll call it for today. I know it looks a little bit of a mess right now, but the nice thing about flies is that you can take just a little bit of time with the bodkin. sort everything out. Anyway, so that's where we'll call it for this week. Next week, of course, we will put the wing on the fly. And do all that. Stray fiber, stay. So thanks for hanging out with me this week. As always, if you enjoy the content and want to see more of my work, hello. And want to see more of my work, go follow on Instagram, just wondering.brad on Instagram. And if you want to support the channel, you can or purchase any flies that you have seen me tie on this stream. It's Studio 1213 on Etsy. All the money that comes in through the Etsy shop comes back into the channel. It allows me to buy things like new webcams, like I did this past year, new microphones, and also materials, so that I can keep doing this and bringing you classic Atlantic salmon fly content. And like I said, there's going to be new stuff coming up this year. Looking forward to doing some more educational content now that I have the time. Thank you, Donovan. Happy New Year's to you too. Yeah, so stay tuned. There will be a learning curve for sure. It has been $14 years since I've actually produced a legitimate, heavily edited video. So there will be a learning curve. Some of the early stuff probably will be a little bit junk, but there will always be the weekend streams to come back to. And now I am trying to adjust my current work schedule. So currently I am working Friday. Well, not today because it's New Year's, but I'm working Friday through Tuesday. I am hopefully going to be adjusting that so that I have Sundays off instead of Wednesdays. So that way my weekend streams will become weekend again. So stay tuned for that. I'm not sure if I can make that happen, but I'll of course announce it on the Instagram. Other than that, thanks for hanging out. Happy New Year to all of you, and I hope that this year is safe and prosperous, and better than 2020. Thanks, and I'll see you next week. Take care.